Welcome to another Boardroom segment. Today, we're lucky enough to have the founder of 35 Ventures, the creator of the Boardroom brand himself, Rich Kleiman. Rich, what's up, brother?
What's
How you
up?
doing, man?
What's up, Jay? How are you, my man?
Good, man. How's everything going? Where are you right now?
I am out in the Hamptons, bro. I'm very blessed. I was able to leave the city about a week ago, and truly a luxury to be able to get outside and get out of kind of ground zero, which is what the city feels like. And for my kids to be able to get outside is a real benefit. But I'm just glued to the TV. I'm one of those people that try to consume as much information as possible.
Can we just go there? Every day when you watch these White House pressers, where does your brain go? What does the mind of Rich Kleiman think watching these things?
Well, I'll tell you, and you can attest to this. I've been hip to this for a while. I started following this in January, February. I like caught a few headlines on CNN or New York Times, and it wasn't at top and front and center at that point. And I just kind of got consumed with it. And my brother and I really like every day we're kind of sharing thoughts on what we were reading, and it felt like still the kind of thing that was happening on the other end of the world. You know, when you grow up in America, you just feel like you're untouchable from so many of these things. And I was telling everybody, I was telling you, I was watching this thing coming, but it just didn't make any sense. But now it's tough, man. It's tough because the more you consume, you almost get more confused. I try to read the medical journals, I try to read what some of the scientists say, but then the headlines and newspapers are written by on opinion by a journalist who's doing the best they can, but nobody knows. And I think that's the scary part. But at the same time, I feel like it's my obligation for my family and for my friends and for all of us at our company to for someone needs to understand and get information to share and to spread. And I try to do that as best I can.
Provide me some insight, man. Obviously, the last couple of days have been crazy when we found out that Kev contracted, COVID-19. Like from now, put your manager hat on because I know you had to wear that. Like, take me through what that whirlwind was like, man, and experience and all that. And then obviously worrying about yourself and your family and everybody that you interact with.
Yeah, I mean, when we found out, Kevin told me, and instantly, like, it's not a manager hat as much as just like a friend hat.
Mm.
But I know that as his manager, as his friend, that he's looking for me to kind of assist in direction and advice in terms of what those next steps are. So we kind of spoke to the doctors together, and I was able to get as much information from them on what he needed to do. And being that he had no symptoms, as you can see in the news, there's just very little to do except for isolating yourself, monitoring your symptoms, and informing as many people close to you that you were in contact with that you had seen them. However, when you're an NBA player, there's no way to gauge how many people you've been in contact with or how many people you've been close to. When you walk down the street, you're dapping people up. When you leave a hotel, you're signing pictures and signing autographs. So, I think that was the thought process quickly was like, how are you going to do that? And Kevin as well as anyone. I mean, the guy has as big a heart as there is. So instantly he was thinking about everyone else that he was around and had to tell everybody else. And then you think your own feelings inside, like, hold up. So this thing on the news and on every TV screen, I have it. Like, once you have to wrap your mind around that, it's a lot. But I think as the days subside and you get no symptoms and you inform yourself, and he, like me, is very well read and very, very informed, you start to have somewhat of a sense of calm and get through it. And then I think we all now are starting to realize that in some ways we're all going to get it, whether we've had it or we're going to get it, and we're going to build up an immunity. So some of the people that are fortunate enough to get it early and have no symptoms or get through their symptoms, in a lot of ways, are just getting a jump start on what is inevitable.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. Been hearing a lot of people politically talk about that, to a degree that maybe this whole thing was suppressed for a while, that maybe it started to happen during the flu season and there was conflation with people thinking that they had the flu, but they may have had COVID-19. So I would agree with you in that sense, man. Can you do me a favor though? Like after you were done talking to him and helping him and his family handle the situation, like when did it click for you about yourself and your family and how did you handle that?
Well, first of all, like, because I had read so much of it and I try to lean on science as best I know and stats and numbers, you know the percentages, and you understand that as scary as this is and as widespread as this is, it's not a death sentence. So there wasn't this like alarmist in me that started worrying for my family or I instantly. But you think about when you were kind of last around it or exposed to it. But I also had wrapped my head around the fact that there is no way to trace it. At least at that point, for us, all of us in New York, we weren't tracing this thing. Like, you can't identify where it is and who you think you got it from. So we all felt fine. We were in the process of leaving the city at the time. And, you know, I, I think it's an interesting time for people with children because you can't lie. You can't mislead your kids. You can't even try to put on like a brave face because they're so intelligent and they're so savvy and picking up on energy. And it's so clear that everyone in the world is acting in a way in which we've never acted before. Watching things, not leaving your house. These are things that you just can't explain to your kids by saying, yeah, this is normal. Like, oh, I dealt with this. That's usually how you answer a child, is kind of referencing a time in your life where you dealt with something like this, but none of us have. But the honesty that I've kind of relayed to my children is just like, look, I don't know what's going on, but I know that we're doing everything in the world we can do to keep you guys safe and us safe, and we're all going to get through it. And if someone gets sick, they're going to get through it. And my older one, it's tougher for her to understand it. It really hit home for her when Kevin found out he had it. But both of them show it in different ways, and these kids are homeschooling. I have so much respect for teachers. I cannot imagine these teachers scared for their own well-being, their own families, their own kids, having to put together these online classes and curriculums. And, it's tough. But my feeling was just like, I'm just getting out of the city. I want to keep everybody calm and try to keep as much normalcy as possible.
Well, I'm glad you and the family are doing well now, man. Give me some context because I we met a long time ago at a party in LA. Method Man, actually, same party. It was wild. And watching your career, I mean, I know that you've managed guys like Wale, Mark Ronson, Solange. Give the people some context to the inception of Rich Kleiman and where Rich Kleiman came out from.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked about it a little bit, but for me, I like just knew I wanted to be somebody. I wanted to be somebody, like that sounds very kind of novel, but I just knew that I wanted to do something in the world that I was recognized for, that could be a position of leadership. And the thing that inspired me and where I got that kind of high was when I was in a basketball arena and around basketball. So I played, and I played seriously, but I didn't necessarily think at any point I was going to play in the NBA. Like, I had enough foresight because I studied the game so much. You know what I'm saying?
You do got a
But
nice
I didn't
jumper
want to.
though. You got a nice jumper
No,
though.
I could shoot it. I could shoot it, bro. But I can't get open. I can't get my shot off anymore. But I went to college. I knew quickly I couldn't operate like that. Like, I just wasn't ready emotionally. I had a I had a really like tough high school year at home, but in school I was always kind of very social, very active, and popular, and I just didn't focus on schoolwork though. I just focused on building a network and socializing. I just was always very consumed with that, too consumed. When I went to college, I didn't really have any direction. Again, just kind of got caught up and socialized, and I left school pretty early, like right away, or school left me.
Hmm.
Um, and I just, you know, I'm tough on people that say they want to be an entrepreneur, because I truly don't think that that's like a job title. I think it's a way of life. It's a mind state, and I had that. I definitely had that. I could say I had that. I feel confident knowing that that is what I was born with, and I worked in music and worked in sports and worked in TV and film, and I had a lot of incredible mini milestones, I call them, and I was really checking a lot of boxes on mini milestones. I produced films, I managed artists that won Grammys, and I was in the studio with some of the most successful artists in the world. I was so fortunate to work for Jay-Z for so long and see things and experience things that I never would have been able to, and watch how people move in such a incredible way, incredible fashion, and modeled so much of what I already had inside of me with some of those experiences. And then, ultimately where I really wanted to be was in the world of sports. And when I had the opportunity to dive into that world, I took all my experience prior to that in all these different walks of life and kind of put them to task with my knowledge of sports, which was what I always leaned on. And then I met someone in Kevin who, you know, just saw in me what I saw in me. And you don't get that. That's rare. So from there, I kind of like had this canvas now with one of the greatest athletes in the history of the world to create an enterprise and do things in media and do things in technology and help build his legacy and his business and his foundation, all of this stuff that I always wanted to do. And then the boardroom, I think, was the culmination of all of it, because it was like, now let me explain in my way and in our way on this platform what this is, like what the world of sports off the court, off the field looks like now. What do these conversations look like? What do the deals look like? What is the culture? How do you find a way, an entry point into the world of sports without just being an agent or a lawyer, you know? So
Mm.
all of it is kind of like culminated in the boardroom.
When did you know that you and Kevin had that special bond? Like when did it click for you? Like this is different right here.
I tell you, the first I met him, you know, Wale introduced me to him right after his rookie year, and I vibe with him right away, and we kept in touch. And I'd run into him sometimes because he would be doing like a commercial with an artist I was representing, and I would see him and Tony and Charlie and his group, and I just clicked with them and hit it off with them. And I've always had like a real connection with the DC area. For some reason, I just vibe with everybody from DC and from PG County, and I had known a lot of Wale and his people, and got really tight with Kevin and his friends. And you know, when we first started really exploring working together, I think we just spoke the same language in that way and understood each other. And you know, it takes time though, and you got to build up trust to go from being a player's agent to like saying, all right, we kind of combining forces and building something together. And you know, it was like a fast moving train. You know what I'm saying? Like after a year, it felt like we've been working together for 10 years. It was that kind of thing.
And so when you guys connected, and obviously you guys are to where you guys are now, man, like what is the next step for people? Because you've done so much, man. I mean, you have a series coming out on Apple called Swagger. You have a show coming out PG County that you've done, which is really cool. By the way, nobody recognizes all the great athletes coming from PG County. You talk about that DC area. You've done so much as far as dynamic, right? Master dynamic with that brand. Like where do you see the brand of 35 Ventures going, and where do you see the brand of Rich Climate going?
Well, 35 Ventures is the priority, and that is to build a enterprise that can withstand time. You know, we're in scary times now, and fortunately, we had built our company to this point to withstand this time, and I want to be able to withstand time in general and be able to have Kevin's family and his children and grandchildren work and operate 35 Ventures, my kids and grandchildren. And I think there's particular assets within the enterprise, like the boardroom, and like some of our other media and TV projects and our investing that, you know, we'll have times when maybe one of these assets like the boardroom rises to the top of what our attention is right now, and something that we're really focused on creating and building and having that be something that exists on its own. But I think we always want to work on creative projects and get into creative industries and to remain entrepreneurial and remain nimble. We have a small group of 17 people, all very like-minded, entrepreneurial team members that, you know, if they have ideas to bring to the table, we want to help and bring those to life and amplify that. But, you know, as a platform, the boardroom, I think this is something that has real potential to grow into something that's substantial and something that's read and subscribed to and and looked at as like a real voice in the world of sports and business and culture. And you know, so I think we'll just keep building this company. I mean, the sky's the limit for us. And yes, we both ultimately want to be involved with a professional sports team. I definitely would love to run a team one day. I know Kevin wants to own and run a team one day, but for now I want to build a business. But I'll tell you, Jay, and I'm dead serious, this uh corona era has made me really think about being in public office when I'm older. I swear to God, I am dead firmly set in my mind, knowing that there's probably two sides to so many things, but ultimately, horrible, poor leadership is why we're in this situation. I strongly agree and believe that, and there's no one that can question that, and nobody that could give me a reason to doubt that. And for me, I feel like if we cannot put our best leaders and most sophisticated and savvy minds in these positions, at some point, these things are going to keep happening to our kids, to our for our families, and like I'll do whatever I can do down the road to help that out.
Speaking of good leadership, man, let's talk about the NBA a little bit because I know you have a very close relationship with Adam Silver. I mean, this year has been crazy for the league, dealing with the death of David Stern, the China situation with Daryl Morey, then Kobe's passing, and now the suspension of the season pretty much. I know you're close to him. How have those conversations gone, man?
Well, I mean, I think Adam Silver is a perfect example of my earlier point about how ultimately leadership is responsible for so much because the facts are the facts and circumstances are the circumstances. However, you need a voice that can give calm, that can give clarity, that doesn't promise anything, but gives you the goal, gives you the roadmap to where we're trying to go, and allows you to understand that along the way you will be spoken to honesty, you will be spoken to with sincerity, and you will be given the information as it's coming to light. Whereas in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, we don't feel like that. So I think what Adam does so well is so eloquently speak to his people, the fans around the world of the NBA, and give you the real, give you the candor on the situations in China. Tell you when he's suffering and in pain, when he loses someone like David Stern, like the whole community did, or when the whole world lost someone like Kobe, and the same thing that he was having to go through as a human being. And when you're spoken to like that, you believe it and you lean on it and you rely on it because that's how we've been thought to get through things in our life. Presidential behavior. So say what people want about presidents before Clinton, Obama, obviously, and then even Bush to some degree. Now, looking back on it, these were presidential people that, whether you agreed with policy or not, spoke to you like human beings and gave you some sense of calm. And Adam does that time and time again. In a lot of ways, I think now the NBA's become the voice of all of sports. When you see how the NBA reacted so quickly and to understand that that symbolized like the magnitude of this issue. I can't say enough about his leadership. I mean, I joked to a friend of mine yesterday that he honestly should run for president, but I think having him run the NBA is good enough. But yeah, I mean, I think the world to him as a person.
When do you think the league will resume? Do you think that will be? You think the summer is a realistic timeline? Do you think we'll just probably start next season? The season is a wash. Like, what do you think overall?
I don't know. I mean, I think when you see Adam Silver's like ability to do unorthodox things like the All-Star game format and the way they spoke about tournament play and always open to ideas like that. Obviously, we're not going to see the season as we knew it. We're not going to see a traditional 3-round, 7-game series and then the finals. I just don't see it. I don't see how the timing works. And we're still so unsure about the trajectory of the disease. But what I do know is that sports as we know it, in my opinion, will return. This is not a way of life. What has changed, though, is people may be more aware of how they overall spread germ or how they overall don't take being as neat or clean or sanitary as serious as they should, right? But will people be in stadiums again, in arenas again? Of course they will. This is not a death sentence to everybody, and the Olympics will come back. I'm very hopeful that some format of the NBA, whether it's tournament play, bracket play, shorter playoff series, I'm confident and hopeful that it'll return. And I think that that'll mean so much to so many people, even if there's no fans in the stadium, even though that's going to be tough for everybody as well. I think it'll return. But someone asked me yesterday if I think sports has changed, and no, I don't. I think that maybe society's changing, and maybe it'll change for the better once we get through this. But sports will return.
RK, I'm telling you, it's something that we should look into, and we're giving everybody a caveat into how we think and how these ideas come up. I do think it will change slightly, man. I Now look, obviously we can get this thing contained and under control, but who knows what happens next flu season, next fall, next spring, right? I do see everybody's going to want to sit courtside in some form or fashion, man. Like if that's augmented reality, if that's virtual reality, a lot of these things that can take you from your home to these live sporting events where you can still feel and see these guys, man. I do believe that will be it may not be in its entirety, but to some degree, a portion of what the future looks like.
Oh yeah. Oh, listen, for sure, sports are changing, and the experience in arena is always being explored and will change. I meant I don't think sports will change because of this disease. I don't think that people will ultimately be social distancing in perpetuity and that people are going to be taking temperature before they come into an arena. We just happen to be experiencing in our society in 2020 what people experienced in 1918. And in 1918, the world was different, access was different, information was different. They didn't get news fed to them all day long, and they evolved and they got through it in 1918. We'll get through it in 2020. That's what I meant won't change. But for sure, the experience in arena when live betting is brought into more of like mainstream culture, and that's something that is like completely no stigma and in arena, and that's almost there. All those things will change the game for sure. And I think you've seen with Adam that he's very open to changing format and changing the things that we've always leaned on, these 82 game seasons and the 7 game series. And think about when they changed from 5 to 7 in the first round. It was like, whoa, this is crazy. It just goes on, and those things go on, and I think you'll see that evolve for sure.
What do you think about the leadership that's been shown internally from some of the players in the league? I mean, Kyrie just donated, I think, $323,000 to, kids in the Brooklyn, New York area who are underserviced for food. Zion, donating, I don't even know what percentage of his paycheck for Brand Jordan he'll donate to keep the staff going. I mean, it's pretty amazing to watch how all these guys have stepped up.
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny because people still say things like, how great is it that the athletes are doing this? And I know what you meant by it, but in reality, name another group of people in the whole world that come together and react and give back the way athletes do. They don't. I mean, athletes' instincts to give back are unlike anyone else we see. They're not scared to put their name out there behind it, and they're also not scared when it's appropriate to just give their money and not put their name out there. There's so many athletes you hear about that are still giving and are probably giving right now in this time, and they don't need to have their name out there, and both are good. But for me, athletes always step up. They always step up, and it's so impactful for other people to realize the importance of things, to realize that it's important to follow suit no matter how much money you have. And also, it just kind of is a reflection on what doing good can actually do. And people, if they're going to follow NBA players, and if that's what it is that's going to motivate them, that's incredible. But I think for these players, they're doing it because it's also inherently something they want to do, not just to show the world, but it's inspiring and people see it.
Role play with me for a second. So I know you said you want to be an owner one day or part of an ownership group. So I'll give you a scenario. And I know that you haven't had the experience of owning a team for a long time, but tell me how you would handle the scenario in today's climate. So there was a report out this morning that the ownership group for the 76ers and the Devils decided that any employee that's making over $50,000, they're going to be subjected to a major pay cut. You have two billionaires who own that, amidst some other people. We actually did an interview with Michael Rubin, who I think is incredible, Fanatics and what they have. But like, if you were in that position, Rich, how would you go about? I mean, because obviously you still have to, like, people want to make money, right? And you're bleeding a lot of money in these times where you don't have ticket revenue. You don't have, I don't know what these deals are with TV, media rights as well. They're still being paid on that. But how would you, if you were in a leadership position of one of these ownership groups, how would you think about that?
That's a good question. I mean, first of all, every situation is different. And I think that this is such a fluid environment that we're in right now with this disease and what's happening in the world that I would have to do a lot of assessing and a lot of pausing for a second and not overreacting. I think it's important for ownership, like I said before, when it comes to Adam and our government in their particular ownership positions, to make sure that you don't react too fast, that you don't react too quick, but that you get as much of the information as possible, as quickly as possible. I don't know the Sixers situation. I didn't see it, so I'm not quite certain exactly what the kind of points are within that. But, as an organization, I would not allow the people, as best that I could, that work for me, to have to suffer and lose their job. But at the same time, this is the reality we're in. Our entire world has been shut down. So, the problem is that I just don't know if it's sustainable to say that every filthy rich individual that owns a team shouldn't be able to make cuts because they could personally um, offset those costs. And I think a lot of these guys do this, and a lot of these women do this to a degree. And I'm sure looking at every possible opportunity to do that, it's not a sustainable operation to say, like, okay, don't fire any of your employees. You're making an eighth of the money you made, and make sure you pay everybody in full. And I'm sure, knowing the owners in Philly and knowing the owners around the NBA, that's not what anyone's looking to do. But this is odd times, and I don't know the internal economics of these teams to the degree that hopefully I will need to know one day if I ever have the opportunity. And let me be clear, I don't foresee a time in my life where I'm buying a team outright. I don't know if I'm going to have money like that, but I hope that my ability to lead and operate and run and know sports, and my partnership with Sniper over there, will allow us to have a chance to be in that position.
So, if you're thinking about that and you're thinking about media rights, where do you see the whole business of media going? I mean, everything is so different now. I'm doing hits from my home. Everything seems, I mean, talk about we're practicing social distancing, but in real time, spacing miles away from each other. Is this the new norm? Do you think we'll get back to what our old normal was? Where do you think this whole industry is going?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think that this may actually slow down where we were going in terms of people working so far away from one another, leaning on their device and their phone for all their entertainment, because we're going to be just completely overdosed on technology. And at least for me, I'm an optimist, and I think that the idea of being in the same place with people and being able to kind of share in that real life energy is always going to be more important than this. Obviously, I think Zoom is having a good is like having a good period right now.
Good
But
investment, Andre
yeah,
Iguodala.
yeah, Andre is a legend for his. He's good, but we'll do that another interview. But yeah, I mean, I think that if anything, I think this may people rely a little bit too much on this and realize that it's important to keep up that human interaction. But for sure, the landscape in the media business is forever evolving and changing, and there's so many new content creators and new platforms and new avenues in which we can consume, and so many icons on your smart TV. And like, what is cable? I don't even know anymore. Like, you say cable to someone under 30, they don't even know what that means. They think it might be a wire. And it's like, all of that is a lot. And I think that what is needed is a little bit of organization. For someone that's a little pretty OCD, I need people to start organizing a bit the content they're distributing. We can't deal with so much on one screen at one time. There's so many options, and I'm just scrolling through Instagram. I might as well just close my eyes. I'm not even looking. I'm just scrolling. Um, so, I focus, me personally, and I just talked about this with Kevin the other day, and he reiterated it because I was frustrated about the video you did with O'Shea. I said, that should have 350,000 views, man. But people just scroll through that. And he was like, you know what? As long as we keep making quality and we're proud of what we do, it will prevail. And that's how I look at it now. I think there's more of an emphasis on quality and figuring out what your angle is. What are you speaking about that's different than everybody else? Because, man, I can't see the same thing over and over again.
Well, look, man, it's been an honor to be working with you for as long as we have, and I wanted to actually ask you a question because I think it'd be really cool for people and younger kids to see guys like Kev and see guys like LeBron and some of these conglomerates, right, that you and Mav have been able to build with them. Um, how do you, when things come across your table, how do you and Kevin vet those things, Rich? Because I assume I have so many people that reach out to me via DM that reach out to me. I have this idea, I have that idea. And you and I have had multiple conversations about this over the past year and a half, 2 years. But like, where does your brain go? How do you vet that? And how do you walk Kevin through what steps you think will be good for the brand and good for him?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think our filter recently has had to shrink a bit because when we've started the things we've started now, it's important to be okay with knowing that an opportunity may go by, and that we got to put our chips in on some of the things that we're building. And you take on too much or you look at too much, you may end up losing ground on what you're working on and not being as efficient and effective in what it is you're working on. So I think that now that we've really honed in on what the direction of the business is, we're looking at less overall. That being said, I mean, I try to involve the whole team because, like I said earlier, we did get this group of people for a reason. And you know that from sitting in these meetings that I like to get the temperature of everyone that's in the woods, in the weeds with us, the people that got to go to war once we agree to do something. And then number two, obviously lean on Kevin for his innate gut instinct. I really think that's understated. I mean, some of the best entrepreneurs have that just like gut instinct, that ability to read and see something and just know, and I wish there was a math or a science to that, but that's why they're entrepreneurs. So I lean on that a bit. And then I think I have that as well. So I think, we use that first as our kind of barometer, but then it's like, okay, is this a field and a world we want to be in? Is it something that we could help? Is it something that we could be public facing and supporting? Is it something that's just a good investment for us business wise? Is it something that's going to take too much time? Is it something that is changing the game, that it's like a no-brainer and we have to find our way in it? I think that kind of criteria has to be talked about before you dive into the economics and the numbers and to kind of looking at every department, because those things, to a degree, we've put up a good blockade for. So you're not going to get through that kind of first level if it's just like your after school project that you think you can just forward through. You know what I mean? So once we've gotten through that first set of criteria, then, obviously the experts come in and we look at analysis and we look at numbers. And then I also go to get second and third opinions. Like I didn't do that enough earlier in my life, but I really think it's important to like be okay with saying, you know what, I don't fully know. I don't think I'm fully equipped to make the firm final decision on this, and asking people that have been through those same wars already. So it's like a combination of that whole process.
I got one more question for you, and we can figure out whether we want to put this in or not, but I have to ask you anyway. So I think the NBA is so revolutionary that I think we're eventually going to get to this point where we're going to stop looking at cannabis as like a Schedule 5 drug. It's going to be, I mean, with all these other pain medications out there, ibuprofen, Oxycontin. Obviously, we're having a major opiate issue in this country before we got overwhelmed with COVID-19. But do you think the NBA will be the first? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of state by state issues, a lot of federal issues with this going on. But do you think the league will be the first league to pretty much be lenient and say, hey, we don't mind guys using cannabis if that helps them with pain management?
Well, I think football and baseball are doing it currently, and the NBA is, made a point right away of saying that during this time period they wouldn't be testing for anything. I think the best answer to that question, and the only answer, is that in the biggest crisis in 100 years in our country, governments have acknowledged cannabis shops as essential businesses, along with pharmacy and along with supermarkets, and say no more. I mean, that to me is the answer, and that's the reality. And I think that the sooner we rip the Band-Aid off that and the stigma goes away completely, then you put rules in and you put protocol in, and in terms of how you have to operate with it being completely legal. But I mean, if you show up to practice drunk or you get pulled over driving drunk, you're going to get in trouble. So like, that should be the same for anything that you do. But I think it's pretty clear now in a time like this, if we're going to identify this as an essential business, that it's time to just deal with the reality of how important it is to so many people.
Facts. Rich, thanks for the time, brother.
My man, I'll talk to you in 10.
Love, respect. Later.
Later, buddy.